Our methods here at Quitters Incorporated are rather radical, Mr. Morrison. The first month, our operatives will have you under constant supervision.
I've set you up, Mr. Norris.
The wager I'm proposing is very simple. You walk all the way around, you get the money, and you get my wife.
You know, Amanda, there are no real monsters.
Well, this one lives in my wall right there.
Help me! Got to find it. It's after me.
Hey everyone, and welcome back to Home Drive-In. Despite the usual trend in horror films where cats are generally portrayed as the villains of their respective tales, or just a downright hindrance, this overlooked horror anthology makes its titular feline the hero. With this retrospective, we return with yet another Stephen King adaptation and explore the firmly tongue-in-cheek low-budget horror comedy Cat's Eye. Tito, my co-host, and I will be discussing some major plot points from the film, so please consider this your spoiler warning moving forward. We also promise to keep the cat-related puns to a minimum, but for now, let's get stuck into the movie. Movie. My jokes aren't that depressing, seriously. Just a little reminder everybody, if you do enjoy these videos, please give that like button a gentle nudge, leave me a comment to read, and yes, I do read them all, or even consider hitting that subscribe button. A little love from you guys will help me get my channel out there, meaning that I can keep doing what I love and bring you more awesome stuff. Again, thank you so much for being here, but for now, let the show begin. Cat's Eye features a travelling tabby that interweaves three separate tales of horror on a journey to help a troubled young girl with whom he shares a telepathic link. The feisty feline first stumbles upon a quit smoking clinic with some rather severe tactics to ensure its clients kick the habit. The curious kitty then finds himself adopted by a wealthy crime boss who blackmails his wife's lover to navigate the ledge of his high-rise penthouse apartment. This precocious puss then sets out to protect a young girl who becomes the target of a pint-sized and literally breathtaking troll. Having recently adapted Stephen King's Firestarter, producer Dino De Laurentiis was eager to feature its star Drew Barrymore in another film, and asked King to write a screenplay specifically for her. Stephen King reworked two existing tales from his short story collection Night Shift, including Quitters Incorporated and The Ledge, with a third story, The General, written specifically for the film. He then tied all three tales into an anthology where the adventures of a stray cat became interwoven throughout each story. However, Stephen King did have an ulterior motive for collaborating with Dino De Laurentiis, as the author hoped he could direct his own movie one day. The eventual result was Maximum Overdrive. Bad Stephen King, you get off that director's chair. Lewis Teague, being no stranger to the animal kingdom, was invited to direct Cat's Eye based on his previous films Alligator and his earlier Stephen King adaptation of Cujo. Yet in contrast to Cujo's far more sincere tone, it was determined to make Cat's Eye fairly light-hearted while still appeasing fans of the horror genre. During script revisions, Lewis Teague worked closely with Stephen King, which he'd not had the opportunity to do on Cujo, finding the writer to be an excellent collaborator. The producers gathered an ensemble cast to support the film's feline stars, including James Woods, who was then best known for The Onion Field and the acclaimed TV miniseries Holocaust. Woods plays Dick Morrison in the first segment, Quitters Incorporated, whose goal to give up the cigarettes lands him in quite a predicament with a ruthless quit smoking clinic. Late veteran actor and comedian Alan King appears as the clinic's gleefully sadistic consultant who takes great pleasure in reminding Dick of the penalties that wait should he fall off the wagon. Robert Hayes, who rose to prominence with his hilarious but straight-faced performance in Airplane, plays Johnny Norris, the protagonist of the film's second segment, The Ledge. The late Kenneth MacMillan plays Cressner, a crime boss who blackmails Norris into navigating the ledge of his apartment building as retribution for having an affair with his wife. For the final segment, The General, Candy Clark, recognisable from American Graffiti and The Man Who Fell to Earth, plays Sally Ann, the mother of the film's youngest protagonist, Amanda. while James Naughton, the brother of an American werewolf in London star David Naughton, plays Amanda's sympathetic father Hugh. However, the producers made no secret about the true star of the film, with Cat's Eye heavily marketed on its young performer Drew Barrymore, who was worked into all 3 segments. Cat's Eye was filmed and partially set in Wilmington, North Carolina, which also doubled for New York and Atlantic City, where the first 2 segments are based. Dino De Laurentiis had just filmed Firestarter in Wilmington and enjoyed the location so much that he decided to build sound stages there, with Cat's Eye being the first production to make use of them. Filming began in June of 1984, lasting approximately 9 weeks on a relatively small budget of $7 million. Having worked with St. Bernards before for Cujo, Louis Teague soon learned that while dogs are fairly receptive to taking commands, cats have a far less agreeable attitude.
No, I can't be bothered with that. I have no time for that sort of nonsense.
12 different cats played the titular tabby, which was expertly handled by animal trainer Carl Miller and his 19-year-old daughter Teresa. Miller was referred to by the crew as the cat whisperer, with an apparent knack for putting his animals at ease by speaking to them gently rather than firmly giving orders. And since cats rarely obey commands, the only way to coax them into performing was with the promise of a tasty treat, in a process known as conditioned response training. Numerous cats were required, since when one cat was no longer hungry, they would cease to perform, so the trainers simply moved on to the next one. In the film's first segment, a quit smoking clinic run by the Mafia uses the cat as an unwilling demonstration of their methods for handling clients who fall off the wagon. James Woods' character is forced to witness the cat placed into an electrified room, yet the scene was created safely simply by using small jets of compressed air from below the grated floor. Not that a scene filmed in this manner would really fly today, since the cat clearly looks distressed. Still, Louis Teague insisted that no harm came to the animals and later commented that they deliberately tried to make the scene look artificial so as not to upset audiences too much.
Boogie down, baby.
For a later party scene, Louis Teague wanted to use the song Every Breath You Take by The Police, who were asking far too much money for the already tight budget. Dino De Laurentiis then had to decide whether or not to purchase publishing rights to the lyrics and use a cover band instead, which was still a costly endeavour. As licensing was still being sought, filming had already begun, so Teague had to film a hallucination scene in which Alan King sings and dances to the song twice. He shot one take of him simply dancing and another of him mouthing the lyrics, yet Teague only showed the latter to Dino De Laurentiis, who concluded that the song now had to be used. According to Louis Teague, Dino responded by saying, "Now I have to buy the rights," which he ultimately did, and the song wound up being performed by a sound-alike band. Someone on the IMDb trivia section of Cat's Eye made some interesting speculations about the relevance of this song for this segment and the rest of the film as well. I won't spell them all out here for you, but fans of the film might find it an interesting read.
Oh my gosh, look at that, a cat!
I got 2,000, says he can make it.
You kidding?
The second segment, The Ledge, establishes an antagonist Kressner in a hammed-up performance by the late Kenneth MacMillan as a wealthy mob boss with an insatiable appetite for placing bets. As the titular tabby enters the story, Kressner and an associate place a bet on the fate of the cat as they eventually coax it across a busy street. And while the scene appears dangerous, the production team made expert use of long lenses, which compresses the foreground and background, making objects appear much closer together. When the cat makes its final sprint across the busy road, the shots of it running through traffic were created using split screen, with cars filmed separately and matted in during post-production. This segment also features early appearances by Mike Starr, who had a memorable role in Dumb and Dumber, and Charles Dutton, who horror fans will recognise from Alien 3. Dutton was hired for a brief scene in which he drives off and parks a car. However, the production team was unaware of one small detail: Dutton had no idea how to drive. They wound up teaching the actor just enough to film his scenes, with a shot of him actually parking the car, not very well mind you, finally achieved on the 7th take. And while Kressner's deadly wager with Robert Hayes establishes him as the true villain of the story, the Ledge segment introduced a secondary antagonist for our unfortunate hero. While Hayes embarks on his dangerous journey around the building ledge, a pesky pecking pigeon decides to make a bad situation even worse. To teach the pigeon to attack Robert Hayes' feet, it had been trained to feed from a boot through a hole cut out in the ankle. The pigeon would soon learn that when they pecked at a specific spot in the boot, it would be rewarded with food. And while Robert Hayes could certainly feel the pigeon pecking at his ankle while filming, he insists it wasn't too painful, with his blood-soaked sock being the work of the effects department. While The Ledge is regarded by some as the weakest of the three stories, one might find some new appreciation for it considering the technical ingenuity that went into filming it. The shots of Robert Hayes walking the ledge were actually filmed indoors on a soundstage, with the ledge set a mere 12 feet off the ground, with industrial fans to simulate wind. The city background was achieved using a backdrop known as a translight, which in layman's terms is simply a giant backlit photograph. Surrounding buildings were mostly created using forced perspective, with models placed close to the camera with the action in the distance to make the miniatures appear much larger. The use of forced perspective also worked for background buildings as well, with this seemingly straightforward shot also achieved with a miniature model. To simulate the traffic below, miniature cars were actually placed on a conveyor belt, which on very close inspection becomes evident since you can actually see the road moving as well. Sorry if I ruined that scene for you, just call me the master of spoiled illusions. Nonetheless, most filmgoers at the time had no issue believing that Robert Hayes was indeed hanging off a several-story building while shooting this segment. While the ledge segment has some tense moments, it is somewhat derivative of an earlier Stephen King story, being remarkably similar to Something to Tide You Over from his earlier anthology film Creepshow. Both segments feature a wealthy middle-aged antagonist who gives their wife's lover an ultimatum before the tables are finally turned. However, both stories also have another uncanny connection. Robert Hayes and Leslie Nielsen appear in Cat's Eye and Creepshow respectively, yet both actors are quite possibly best known for their hilarious performances in Airplane. Surely the funniest film ever made.
And don't call me Shirley.
And while the ledge sequence made some effective use of miniature props, the opposite would be true when filming the third segment, The General. The cat's third and final adventure sees him squatting with a young family whose 8-year-old daughter Amanda is tormented by a tiny troll living in her bedroom wall. Using optical compositing as sparingly as possible, Lewis Teague was insistent on creating the illusion of a 6-inch troll using practical sets and in-camera trickery. To give the troll actor the correct scale required the construction of an utterly gigantic replica of Amanda's bedroom. A gargantuan set was constructed, including props that, according to Lewis Teague, were scaled up by about 30 times the normal size. A massive bed measuring about 40 by 20 feet was also built, which by some reports was in the Guinness Book of Records for the largest bed ever constructed at that time. Lewis Teague would later go on to mention that manoeuvring the giant props was no easy task, often requiring a couple of forklifts to move something as simple as a chair. Carlo Rambaldi, who produced the aliens for Close Encounters of the Third Kind and E.T., also designed the devilish troll for Cat's Eye. The troll's head and facial features were a fairly complex mechanism filled with motorized gears that required about 15 operators to manipulate. The troll was performed by an uncredited 4-foot-high actor, Daniel Rogers, while the creature's voice was provided by Frank Welker. Welker's list of vocal credits is massive, with one of his most famous being Fred from Scooby-Doo, yet has voiced countless film, television, and video game characters. While preparation was key in developing the troll, the fate of the tiny creature still hadn't been decided by the time filming on this segment was underway. It was decided to do away with the creature using what props they had at their disposal. Therefore, an oversized turntable and fan combined provided a somewhat fitting end for the creature. And now we pause this Cat's Eye retrospective to play a game we like to call Let's Count the Stephen King References. The dog scene chasing the cat at the start of the film was expertly acted by Bernie, one of the St. Bernards that played the titular menace in Cujo. In the same scene, both animals are almost struck by a red Plymouth Fury, which is, of course, a reference to Christine. The car even included a bumper sticker to really drive that point home. When James Woods is watching TV, he is seen watching The Dead Zone, also by Stephen King, shutting it off in a nicotine-deprived rant, yelling, "Who writes this crap?" The Penthouse magazine that Kressner flips through is the same issue in which the short story The Ledge was first published, upon which this segment was based. Finally, Candy Clark is seen reading Pet Sematary in bed, which is also a clever nod to the fact that her character has nothing but contempt for the cat that has entered their lives.
Hugh, I just don't trust that cat.
Okay, we did this movie together so many years ago, and we did this movie Cat's Eye together.
Right.
And I played every little girl. That's the movie.
Now I want to see this movie. I was cut out of it.
A prologue had originally been shot for the film, which was to feature two other parents who discovered that their daughter, also played by Drew Barrymore, has stopped breathing. The mother, portrayed by Patti LuPone, blames an urban legend about cats stealing the breath of children and emerges from the basement armed with a submachine gun. She winds up shooting up her entire house in an attempt to kill their pet cat, who manages to dodge the gunfire before escaping outside. The prologue would have been the lead up to what is now the beginning of the film, which explains why the cat is in fact running down the street. The scene also ties into the film's epilogue, where it's assumed that the cat is going to be revealed as also trying to steal Drew Barrymore's breath. Hey, which, let's face it, would have been awesome, but they went the safe route on that one. The studio decided to drop the scene, declaring it to be far too over the top, much to the disappointment of Lewis Teague, who did retort by saying,
"Haven't you seen the rest of the film? The whole film is over the top. I think it's in characteristic style."
While Patti LuPone herself had her own interpretation of the story.
I understand it was cut out because I was too funny. That's what I heard.
In what was a lucky break, the production team managed to book the early talents of musical composer Alan Silvestri, fresh off his score for Romancing the Stone. Wanting to experiment with electronic instruments without the expense of an orchestra, Silvestri composed an upbeat main title that complemented the film's light-hearted tone. In fact, this optimistic little tune seemed to be providing the blueprint for what would become Silvestri's most famous movie theme that he would compose later that same year. I'll let you be the judge. The soundtrack was released in 1985 by Varese Sarabande with 12 tracks. However, Intrada Records re-released the soundtrack in 2015 and again in 2022 with 26 tracks. The soundtrack for Cat's Eye demonstrates the early talents of Silvestri, who used synthesizers to create an often creepy and often suitably campy little score.
Stephen King, your favorite novelist and master of modern horror, has written his first motion picture screenplay.
Cat's Eye hit cinemas on April 12, 1985, bringing in a modest $13 million on its $7 million budget during its theatrical run. Cat's Eye was the first Stephen King adaptation to be branded with the newly created PG-13 rating, which was born of the backlash of these two not-so-suitable-for-kids blockbusters of 1984. Despite receiving less than overwhelming financial returns, Cat's Eye received largely positive reviews, with Roger Ebert calling the film a superior and effective, quote, anthology of fears. Vincent Canby, who cited Lewis Teague's earlier film Alligator as one of his favourites, called Cat's Eye the best Stephen King adaptation since Carrie, once again lauding Teague's comic direction. Gene Siskel also enjoyed most of the film, yet felt the first and third segments would have worked better as full-length features, feeling that the Ledge segment let the overall film down. Cat's Eye was released on Blu-ray by Warner Brothers in the US, featuring a commentary by Lewis Teague. However, American fans might want to look offshore for a better release. The Studio Canal 4K and Blu-ray release in the UK also features commentary by Lewis Teague, as well as interviews with the director, actor Robert Hayes, and animal trainer Teresa Ann Miller. Australia also received the Studio Canal release on Blu-ray as a part of their Classics Remastered selection, as well as a 4K release which I really wish I'd seen before I grabbed the Blu-ray. While it would have been great to see interviews with James Woods and Drew Barrymore, I am surprised Studio Canal gave this film the love it received and is a must-own for fans of the film. Horror fans expecting an all-out gore fest compared with, say, Creepshow may leave a little disappointed at Cat's Eye's lightheartedness and even silly tone. While Creepshow carefully balances its humour with some truly visceral scenes of horror, Cat's Eye earns its PG-13 rating by keeping its mood more comedic than frightening. However, the film isn't all for laughs and does feature one or two genuinely intense moments that counterbalance its tongue-in-cheek tone. Cat's Eye is still immensely enjoyable and should satiate the appetites of those in the mood for some darkly comedic entertainment. Not quite perfect, but far from a catastrophe. Thanks so much for watching this video, everyone. We're a massive fan of horror anthologies, with Creepshow being, well, my favourite of all time. However, Cat's Eye is a fun watch if you like your horror light and your comedy dark. And if you want to hear these little YouTubers purr, just gently pad those like and subscribe buttons and feel free to leave us a comment. We will be back shortly with a new video, but until next time, be good to yourselves and each other and your cats. We'll see you next time. Can't roll it. He takes great pleasure in reminding Dick of the penalties that await him should he not read quick enough. Right, considering the technical ingenuity that went into writing a script. Hang on. However, Cat's Eye is a fun watch if you like your horror light. Your comedy dark. I'm so sorry, you're hating this, are you?